Undercover boss saw woman toast sandwiches at 3 a.m., then shocked by who walked into the kitchen. Ethan Marlowe had built 17 deli chains across the East Coast, but he couldn't remember the last time he'd actually made a sandwich. That's what bothered him most as he stood in the harsh fluorescent light of his failing flagship store at 2:47 a.m., wearing a borrowed uniform that smelled like pickles and regret. The name tag said, Eric. Nobody had looked at it twice. You mop the back kitchen, the night manager had mumbled 3 hours ago, already half asleep at the register. Don't touch the ovens. Don't touch the register. Don't touch anything expensive. Ethan had nodded. Watched. Waited. The store was supposed to be dead at this hour. That's what the reports said. Minimal foot traffic. Consider closure. But the reports were wrong. He'd counted 12 customers since midnight, most of them looking strung out, exhausted, or both. Night shift workers. Cab drivers. A nurse still in scrubs. They ordered quickly, paid in crumpled bills, and left without a word. The staff barely acknowledged them. Ethan had spent 2 weeks preparing for this undercover assignment. He'd read every manual, every complaint, every scathing online review. He knew the numbers. Profit margins down 40%, staff turnover at 76%, health code violations piling up faster than the corporate lawyers could bury them. What he hadn't prepared for was how sad it all felt. The tile floors were cracked. The menu board flickered. The sandwich station looked like it had survived a minor explosion. And the employees, God, the employees looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Except one. Ethan noticed her around 2:30 a.m. She had slipped in through the back door so quietly he almost missed it. No uniform. No name tag. Just a faded hoodie, jeans with paint stains, and hair pulled back in a messy bun. She moved through the kitchen like a ghost. The night manager didn't even look up. Ethan watched from behind a rack of industrial cleaning supplies as the young woman, mid-20s, maybe, opened the walk-in cooler and pulled out tomatoes, lettuce, cheese, and deli meat. She set them on the prep counter with careful precision. Then she reached into her hoodie pocket and pulled out a $20 bill. She placed it deliberately on the counter, weighing it down with a salt shaker. Ethan's jaw tightened. She's paying for ingredients. At 3 in the morning? In a store where she doesn't work. He should have stopped her right there. Called her out. Demanded an explanation. But something made him wait. The woman turned on one of the conveyor ovens, the expensive one that corporate had installed last year to optimize throughput, and began assembling sandwiches. Not quickly. Not sloppily. She worked with the kind of focus Ethan had only seen in high-end kitchens. She toasted the bread to an exact golden brown. She layered the ingredients with symmetry. She wrapped each sandwich in wax paper, folded the corners tight, and stacked them in a small backpack that looked like it had seen better days. 6 sandwiches? Perfectly made. Ethan counted 3 bottles of water from the cooler. A handful of granola bars from the shelf. She left another $10 bill. Then she slung the backpack over her shoulder and headed for the back exit. The night manager still didn't look up. Ethan's instincts screamed at him. This is theft. This is liability. This is exactly why the store is failing. But his curiosity screamed louder. He followed her. The alley behind the store smelled like garbage and rain. Ethan kept his distance, ducking behind a dumpster as the woman walked toward a cluster of shadows near the far brick wall. The shadows moved. They were people. 5 of them. Maybe 6. Teenagers, Ethan realized. Kids, really? Huddled together under a patchwork of blankets and cardboard. One of them had a dog, a scraggly mutt that wagged its tail weakly. The woman crouched down, and the group came alive. Elle! One of the boys shouted, scrambling forward. Thought you weren't coming tonight. I'm always coming. The woman, Elle, said quietly. Her voice was soft, but it carried. You know that. She unpacked the sandwiches and handed them out one by one. The kids grabbed them like they hadn't eaten in days. Maybe they hadn't. Got turkey for you, Mia. Elle said, handing one to a girl with a bandaged hand. And Marcus, I know you don't like mustard. You remember? The boy looked stunned. Of course I remember. Ethan watched, frozen, as Elle distributed the water bottles and granola bars. She checked the girl's bandage, asked about someone named Tommy, and gave one of the boys a pair of thick socks. You're gonna freeze out here, Elle said. I'm working on something better. I promise. You always say that. The girl, Mia, said, but she was smiling. And I always mean it. One of the boys looked up, and his eyes landed directly on Ethan. Yo! Who's that? Elle turned sharply, and for a brief second, Ethan saw her face clearly under the dim streetlight. She wasn't what he expected. No hardness. No desperation. Just exhaustion and something else, something that looked like quiet defiance. I don't know, Elle said carefully. But we're leaving. A delivery truck rumbled into the alley, headlights flooding the space. Ethan stepped back instinctively, shielding his eyes. When the light faded, the woman and the kids were gone. Just the dog remained, staring at Ethan like he'd done something wrong. Ethan stood in that alley for 5 full minutes, his mind racing. She was stealing. She was breaking policy. She was putting the company at risk. But she wasn't stealing for herself. He walked back into the store. The night manager was scrolling on his phone. The $20 bill was still on the counter. Hey, Ethan said. Who was that woman? The one who came in earlier? The manager shrugged. Some drifter. Shows up sometimes. Pays for stuff. Doesn't cause trouble. Does she work here? Nah. I think she used to, maybe? I don't know. Not my problem. Ethan stared at him. And you just let her use the ovens? Dude, it's 3 in the morning. As long as she's not burning the place down, I don't care. Ethan felt something twist in his chest. This wasn't just a failing store. This was a place where no one cared anymore. He pulled out his phone and opened the encrypted report file he'd been keeping. He typed quickly. Night staff negligent. Possible theft. Unidentified individual using equipment without authorization. Recommend immediate review. His thumb hovered over the send button. Then he thought about the way the girl, Mia, had smiled. The way Elle had checked her bandage. The way those kids had looked at her like she was the only thing standing between them and the cold. He deleted the message. And for the first time in 15 years, Ethan Marlowe didn't know what the hell he was doing. Ethan couldn't sleep. He'd gone back to his hotel room at dawn, showered, and stared at the ceiling for 3 hours. His mind kept replaying the scene, the sandwiches, the kids, the woman who'd vanished like smoke. Elle, that's what they'd called her. Not a name. Just a letter. By 10 p.m., he was back at the store, wearing the same borrowed uniform. The night manager, a guy named Derek who looked perpetually stoned, barely glanced at him. You again? Thought you quit. Needed the money. Ethan lied. Derek shrugged. Whatever. Mop the bathroom. It's disgusting. Ethan didn't mop the bathroom. He positioned himself near the back door and waited. She showed up at 2:53 a.m. 3 minutes later than last night. Same hoodie. Same quiet entrance. This time she left $30 on the counter and made 8 sandwiches. She added apples, a box of crackers, 2 cartons of orange juice. Ethan's chest tightened. She's feeding more people. When she slipped out the back door, he was ready. The alley was darker tonight. No moon. Just the sick yellow glow of a distant street lamp and the hum of the store's refrigeration unit. Elle walked quickly, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders. Ethan kept his distance, staying close to the walls. She stopped at the same spot, but this time there were more shadows. He counted 9 people. Maybe 10. The teenagers from last night were there, but now there was an older man with a cane, a woman holding a sleeping toddler, and another kid who couldn't have been more than 14. You brought extras, one of the boys, Marcus, said, grinning. You're the best, Elle. Don't call me that where people can hear, she said quietly, but she was smiling. Why? You embarrassed of us? Never, she handed him a sandwich. I'm embarrassed of the people who judge you. The older man took an orange juice with shaking hands. Bless you, girl. Bless you. Save it, Mr. Canton, Elle said gently. How's your leg? Hurts. But I'm still here. Good. Keep it that way. Ethan crouched behind a dumpster, watching as she moved through the group like a medic on a battlefield. She checked the toddler's forehead for fever. She gave the 14-year-old an extra pair of gloves. She asked about someone named Raina, who wasn't there. She went to county, Mia said quietly. Pneumonia. Elle's face went pale. When? 2 days ago. Why didn't someone tell me? We didn't know how to reach you. Elle closed her eyes. For a moment, she looked like she might break. Then she straightened. I'll check on her tomorrow. I promise. You can't save everyone, Princess, Marcus said softly. Don't call me that. Elle snapped, but there was no heat in it. Ethan frowned. Princess? One of the younger kids tugged on Elle's sleeve. Can you tell us a story? Like last time? Not tonight, sweetie. It's too cold. You all need to eat and find somewhere warm. The library basement, the older man said. We can get in through the side window. Elle nodded. Go. I'll meet you there in 20 minutes. The group scattered like birds, taking their food and disappearing into the maze of alleys and side streets. Elle stayed behind, staring at the empty space where they'd been. Ethan stood up. Who are you? Elle spun around, her hand instinctively reaching for something in her pocket. A pocket knife, maybe, but she stopped when she saw his face. You're the guy from last night. I'm Eric, Ethan said. He kept his voice steady. I work at the deli. No, you don't. Her eyes were sharp. I know everyone who works there. You're new. Or you're corporate. Which is it? Ethan hesitated. Does it matter? Yeah. It does. Why are you stealing food? I'm not stealing. I pay for it. With your own money. That's how paying works. Ethan stepped closer. Elle didn't move, but her jaw tightened. You're feeding homeless kids at 3 a.m. Why? Why do you care? Because if corporate finds out, they'll what? Fire me? Elle laughed bitterly. I don't work there. I don't work anywhere. Then why? Because no one else does. Her voice cracked, just slightly. Because those kids sleep in alleys and under bridges and nobody gives a damn. Because Mia's 14 and her mom's in jail and she's got an infected hand that'll get worse if she doesn't get antibiotics. Because Mr. Canton worked for 40 years and lost everything when his wife got cancer. Because that toddler deserves to eat something that isn't garbage. Ethan stared at her. Elle wiped her eyes quickly, angry at herself. You gonna report me? I don't know. Then get out of my way. She pushed past him, and this time Ethan didn't follow. He stood alone in the alley, listening to the sound of sirens in the distance. His phone buzzed. A message from his assistant, board meeting Friday. Harwood wants updates on flagship closure. Ethan looked at the name. Harwood. Something about it felt familiar. He opened his browser and typed, Harwood plus missing daughter. The first result made his blood run cold. Billionaire Marcus Harwood's daughter missing for 5 years. Family offers no comment. He clicked the article. And there, staring back at him from a society photo, was Elle, younger. Polished. Smiling. But unmistakably her. Ethan didn't go back to his hotel that night. He sat in his rental car outside the deli until sunrise, scrolling through articles on his phone. Each one painted the same picture. Leah Harwood, only child of billionaire investor Marcus Harwood, had vanished 5 years ago after a family tragedy. The details were murky. Her mother's death. A public argument. Speculation about drugs, rebellion, mental illness. The tabloids had feasted on it for months before the story went cold. No body. No ransom. No closure. Just a girl who'd walked away from $1 billion inheritance and never looked back. Until she showed up in my failing deli, feeding homeless kids with sandwich meat. Ethan's phone rang. His CFO. The flagship numbers are worse, she said without greeting. We're losing $4,000 a day. The board wants it closed by January. Give me 2 weeks. Ethan. 2 weeks. I need to see something. She sighed. Fine. But Harwood's getting impatient. He wants returns on his investment, and this store is bleeding him dry. Ethan's jaw tightened. Tell Harwood I'll call him personally. He hung up and walked back inside. The morning shift had arrived. 3 exhausted-looking employees were restocking shelves and prepping for the breakfast rush that would never come. The day manager, a woman named Stephanie with bags under her eyes, was counting the register. We're short again, she muttered. How much? One of the workers asked. $40. Same as last week. Ethan approached the counter. What happens when you're short? Stephanie looked up, surprised. You're the new overnight guy? Eric. Yeah. Well, Eric, when we're short, corporate takes it out of our paychecks. That's what happens. She slammed the register shut. I'm logging it as theft. Let them deal with it. Theft? Ethan kept his voice casual. You sure someone stole it? What else would it be? Money doesn't just walk away. One of the stalkers, a kid who couldn't have been older than 19, laughed bitterly. Maybe it went to pay for the overtime they owe us. Marcus, don't start, Stephanie warned. I'm serious. I worked 53 hours last week and got paid for 40. When I called corporate, they said it was a processing error. It's always a processing error, another employee muttered. Stephanie rubbed her temples. Look, I don't make the rules. I just enforce them. If you've got a problem, take it up with HR. HR never answers. Then quit. God knows everyone else has. The room went silent. Ethan leaned against the counter. How many people quit this year? Stephanie looked at him like he'd asked the color of the sky. I don't know. 15? 20? We can't keep anyone longer than 3 months. The pay's garbage, the hours are worse, and corporate doesn't care if we're understaffed as long as the numbers look good on paper. What about the night shift? What about it? Who runs it? Derek. And barely. Half the time he's asleep in the back office. She lowered her voice. Look, I'm not supposed to say this, but night shift is where people go to hide. Corporate doesn't monitor it. Customers are rare. As long as nothing burns down, nobody asks questions. And if someone used the equipment after hours? Stephanie's expression hardened. You mean the drifter girl? Ethan's pulse quickened. You know about her? Everyone knows. She shows up, makes food, leaves money. Honestly? I don't care. She pays more than half our customers. Stephanie glanced around and dropped her voice further. Between you and me, I think she used to work here. Maybe a year ago. But she's not in the system anymore. Why not? No idea. Records get purged all the time. Corporate's database is a nightmare. Ethan filed that away. And nobody's reported her. For what? Being nice? Stephanie shook her head. Look, this place is dying. We all know it. If some girl wants to spend her own money feeding homeless people, she's doing more good than corporate ever did. Marcus, the young stalker, spoke up. She gave my little brother a jacket last winter. Found him sleeping outside the bus station and didn't even ask questions. Just gave him a coat and $20. She bought my daughter diapers once. Another employee added quietly. I was short on rent. She overheard me on the phone and just left a pack by my locker. Ethan felt something twist in his chest. Stephanie noticed his expression. You thinking about reporting her? I don't know what I'm thinking. Well, think fast. Corporate's automated system flagged us this morning. They're sending an audit team next week. She pulled up an email on the computer and turned it toward him. Subject, Inventory Discrepancy Alert, Flagship Location. Automatic penalties applied. Management review required. Failure to resolve may result in immediate termination of staff. Ethan stared at the screen. He'd built this system. He'd approved the algorithms that punished stores without asking questions. He'd signed off on the cost-cutting measures that left employees desperate and exhausted. He'd done this. Eric? You okay? Ethan looked up. Yeah. I'm fine. But he wasn't. He pulled out his phone and opened his encrypted corporate access. It took him 90 seconds to file a false report flagged as high priority. Subject: urgent review needed, flagship theft investigation. He wanted to see what corporate would do. The response came back in 4 minutes. Automated response: staff penalties issued. Location flagged for closure review. No questions asked? No investigation. Just punishment. Ethan closed his phone and looked at the exhausted employees restocking shelves. He'd spent 15 years building an empire. And he never once asked what it cost. Ethan spent the next 3 days digging. He used every resource he had: private investigators, data analysts, even a hacker he'd once hired to find corporate leaks. He tracked Liao Harwood's digital footprint, which was nearly non-existent, and her physical one, which was worse. No bank accounts. No credit cards. No phone registered in her name. She was a ghost. But ghosts left traces. A soup kitchen volunteer remembered her. A clinic nurse recognized her description. A librarian mentioned a young woman who came in twice a week to use the computers. The library? That's where the old man, Mr. Canton, had said they were going. The library basement. Ethan found the building on Thursday afternoon. It was one of those beautiful old Carnegie libraries that cities forgot about, 3 stories of red brick and arched windows, boarded up and marked for demolition. A chain-link fence surrounded it. Signs warned of structural damage. Ethan walked the perimeter until he found the gap the old man had mentioned, a window at ground level, half hidden by overgrown bushes. He squeezed through. The basement was bigger than he'd expected. Old reading rooms had been converted into makeshift living spaces. Sleeping bags lined the floors. Cardboard dividers created privacy. Someone had strung up battery-powered lanterns that cast long shadows across the walls. It was warm. Somehow, they'd gotten the old heating system working. And it was organized. Ethan counted at least 15 people, maybe 20. They moved quietly, respectfully. There was a system here: a rotation board for chores, a schedule for bathroom use, a sign-up sheet for something called job coaching. On the far wall, someone had painted in careful letters: "We take care of each other. You lost?" Ethan turned. It was Marcus, the teenager from the alley. He was holding a broom and looked far more suspicious in daylight. "I'm looking for Elle," Ethan said. "Yeah? Why?" "I need to talk to her." "About what?" "That's between me and her." Marcus stepped closer. He was tall for his age, and there was a hardness in his eyes that came from seeing too much too young. "You a cop?" "No." "Social worker?" "No." "Then who are you?" Before Ethan could answer, a door at the back of the room opened, and Liao walked out. She froze when she saw him. "Marcus, it's fine," she said quietly. "You sure?" "Yeah. Give us a minute." Marcus hesitated, then nodded and walked away, but not before shooting Ethan a warning look. Liao approached slowly. She looked different here, more tired, more guarded. Her hoodie had a new stain on the sleeve. "How did you find this place?" "I followed the trail." "That's not an answer. You're not exactly invisible." "I try to be." She crossed her arms. "What do you want?" Ethan looked around the basement. "This is impressive. It's survival. It's more than that. You've got schedules, systems, a community. How long has this been here? Why do you care?" "Because I'm trying to understand." Ethan met her eyes. "Why would someone with your background choose this?" Liao went very still. "My background." "I know who you are, Liao." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Get out. I'm not here to. I said get out. Her voice was low, dangerous. You don't know anything about me. I know your father is Marcus Harwood. I know you disappeared 5 years ago. I know you walked away from a fortune to live like this. Ethan gestured at the basement. What I don't know is why. That's not your business. It is when your father is one of my company's biggest investors. Leah laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Of course. Of course that's why you're here. Let me guess, he sent you to drag me home? Offer me money? Threaten me? He doesn't know I'm here. Then you're stupider than I thought. Footsteps echoed from across the room. A woman in her 30s approached. She wore a volunteer badge from a local nonprofit. Her eyes widened when she saw Ethan. Oh my God! You're Ethan Marlowe. Leah's head snapped toward him. What? The CEO. The woman continued, starstruck. I saw you on the news last year. The business award thing. The color drained from Leah's face. You're not a worker, she said slowly. You're the boss. Leah. You've been lying to me. This whole time. Her voice shook with fury. You've been spying. I was trying to understand what was happening at my store. Your store? She stepped closer, her eyes blazing. Your store that pays people poverty wages? Your store that punishes employees for corporate mistakes? Your store that throws away enough food every night to feed 50 people? I didn't know. You didn't want to know, Leah shouted. People like you never do. You sit in your offices and look at spreadsheets and make decisions that destroy lives, and you never have to see the consequences. That's not fair. Fair? Leah laughed again. You want to talk about fair? These people work 3 jobs and still can't afford rent. They get sick and lose everything because they can't afford a doctor. They're one bad day away from being here, in this basement, because people like you decided their lives weren't worth protecting. Ethan felt anger flare. And what about you? You ran away from privilege while people out here are fighting just to survive. Don't lecture me about consequences when you've been hiding from yours. The words hung in the air like poison. Leah stared at him, her face unreadable. Then she turned and walked toward the back door. Leah, wait. Leave, she said without looking back. And if you tell anyone about this place, I swear to God, I will make you regret it. She disappeared into the darkness. Marcus appeared at Ethan's shoulder. You should go. I need to talk to her. No. You need to leave. Now. Ethan looked around the basement, at the faces watching him with suspicion and fear. He'd come here looking for answers. All he'd found were more questions. And the sinking realization that he might be the villain in this story. Ethan sat in his car outside the library for an hour, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. You ran away from privilege while people out here are fighting just to survive. He shouldn't have said that. He knew it the moment the words left his mouth. But her self-righteousness had triggered something in him, something defensive and ugly. Maybe because she was right. He drove back to his hotel and opened his laptop. If Leah wouldn't tell him the truth, he'd find it himself. It took 3 phone calls and a significant bribe to a records clerk, but by midnight, Ethan had a file on his screen that made his stomach turn. Police report, September 18, 2020. Officers responded to a domestic disturbance at the Harwood residence, 1840 Belmont Drive. Caller reported screaming and sounds of a physical altercation. Upon arrival, officers found Marcus Harwood, 52, and his daughter, Leah Harwood, 19, in a heated argument. The residence showed signs of property damage, broken vase, overturned furniture. Mr. Harwood claimed his daughter was having a breakdown, following the death of her mother 3 months prior. Leah Harwood was visibly distressed, with bruising on her upper arm consistent with being grabbed. She denied her father caused the injury but refused to explain how it occurred. She stated repeatedly, "He wants to lock me away." Mr. Harwood requested officers escort his daughter to Meadowbrook's psychiatric facility for a 72-hour evaluation hold. He provided documentation from a private psychiatrist diagnosing Miss Harwood with severe depression and suicidal ideation. Miss Harwood became agitated and fled the residence on foot before transport could be arranged. Officers pursued but lost sight of the subject in Riverside Park. Mr. Harwood declined to press charges for property damage. He stated he would handle the matter privately. Incident report, September 19, 2020. Vehicle registered to Leah Harwood found abandoned on Route 7, approximately 40 miles outside city limits. Driver's side door open. Keys in ignition. No sign of driver. Witness reported seeing a young woman matching Miss Harwood's description walking barefoot along the highway shoulder at approximately 3 a.m. Witness offered assistance. Subject declined and walked into the woods. Search conducted. No body found. Case forwarded to Missing Persons. Missing Persons file, status, inactive. After 6 months of investigation, no evidence of foul play found. Marcus Harwood withdrew cooperation, stating he believed his daughter needed space and would return when ready. No further leads pursued. Bank accounts frozen per father's request. Credit cards cancelled. Trust fund access revoked pending her return. Case suspended. Ethan sat back, his chest tight. Leah hadn't just run away. She'd escaped. He opened another folder, this one containing society photos, news clippings, and social media archives that his investigator had pulled. Leah at charity galas, looking uncomfortable in designer gowns. Leah at her mother's funeral, standing apart from her father, her face blank. Leah at 16, accepting an academic award, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. And then, a gossip column from 3 years before she disappeared. Harwood heiress headed for trouble? Sources close to the family say Leah Harwood, daughter of billionaire Marcus Harwood, has been clashing with her father over her future. The 19-year-old reportedly wants to study social work instead of business, much to her father's disappointment. Marcus has big plans for Leah, says a family friend. He expects her to take over the investment firm someday. But Leah's always been more interested in helping people than making money. It's caused tension. After the tragic death of her mother, Elena Harwood, in June, insiders say the relationship has deteriorated further. Leah blames her father for her mother's unhappiness, one source claims. She said some very harsh things. Ethan clicked on another link, a video interview from a business conference 2 years ago. Marcus Harwood sat on stage, perfectly composed in a tailored suit. The interviewer asked about his family. My daughter made her choices, Marcus said, his voice cold. I gave her every opportunity, the best schools, the best resources. She threw it away because she couldn't handle responsibility. Some people aren't built for success. Do you know where she is? I know she's not my concern anymore. The audience had shifted uncomfortably. The interview moved on. Ethan closed the laptop. He'd spent years courting Marcus Harwood's investment. The man was ruthless, calculating, and brilliant with money. He'd pumped millions into Ethan's expansion, always demanding returns, always pushing for higher profits. Ethan had admired him. Now he felt sick. His phone buzzed. A text from his assistant, Marcus Harwood called. Wants meeting ASAP. Says it's urgent. Ethan stared at the message. He thought about Leah in that basement, organizing schedules and checking bandages. He thought about her paying for sandwiches with her own money because she'd walked away from a fortune rather than become her father. He thought about the bruise on her arm in that police report. He wants to lock me away. Ethan made a decision. He opened his contact list and called his lawyer. I need you to file incorporation papers for a nonprofit. Tonight. Ethan, it's 1 a.m. I don't care. I need a legal entity that can receive donations and distribute food to homeless populations. I need it airtight, and I need it done before Friday. What's this about? I'm about to start a war with Marcus Harwood, Ethan said quietly. And I need to make sure Leah's protected when I do. His lawyer was silent for a moment. Are you sure about this? Ethan looked at the photo on his screen. Leah at her mother's funeral, standing alone. No, he admitted. But I'm doing it anyway. He hung up and booked a flight back to corporate headquarters. If he was going to fight Marcus Harwood, he needed leverage. And he needed to do it before the man destroyed his daughter all over again. The boardroom on the 47th floor smelled like leather and expensive coffee. Ethan arrived 15 minutes early, wearing his best suit and carrying a folder that felt like a loaded gun. Around the table sat 12 board members, all of them older, richer, and more skeptical than the last time he pitched an idea this risky. Marcus Harwood sat at the far end, checking his phone. He didn't look up when Ethan entered. "Gentlemen," Ethan began, placing the folder on the table. "I'm proposing a new initiative for our struggling locations. A partnership program that repurposes unsold food for charitable distribution." The CFO frowned. "We already donate expired products to food banks. Once a month. After they've gone bad," Ethan corrected. "I'm talking about fresh food. Daily. Coordinated with local shelters and outreach programs." "That's a logistical nightmare," someone said. "It's a tax write-off," Ethan countered. "And it's good PR. We're hemorrhaging customers because people think we don't care about communities. This changes that narrative." Marcus finally looked up. "How much does it cost?" "Initial estimates put it at $200,000 for the pilot program." "No." The room went silent. Marcus set his phone down deliberately. "We're not in the charity business, Ethan. We're in the profit business. You've been chasing this flagship turnaround for months, and the numbers keep getting worse. Now you want to throw money at homeless people? I want to stop wasting food while people starve. People starve because they make poor choices," Marcus said coldly. "That's not our responsibility." Ethan felt his jaw tighten. "With respect, Marcus, this company was built on community values. This company was built on my money." Marcus leaned forward. $6 million I've invested in your expansion. And what do I have to show for it? Declining revenue and a CEO who wants to play social worker. The flagship can be saved. Close it. Cut your losses. There are people who depend on that store. Then they should have spent more money there." Ethan slammed his hand on the table. Several board members jumped. "I'm not closing it." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me? You heard me. I'm implementing this program whether you like it or not. Then I'm pulling my investment." "Fine." The room erupted. Board members spoke over each other, voices rising in panic. Marcus stood slowly, his face carved from ice. "You're making a mistake, Ethan. Maybe. But it's my company. Not if I convince the board to remove you. You don't have the votes." Marcus smiled, a predator's smile. "We'll see." He turned to leave, then stopped. "Out of curiosity, what inspired this sudden humanitarian phase? Did you find God? Or just a good publicist?" Ethan didn't answer. Marcus's eyes flickered with something, suspicion maybe. "This wouldn't have anything to do with a certain young woman operating illegally out of your flagship location, would it?" Every head in the room turned toward Ethan. His blood ran cold. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Really?" "Because I've had reports of someone using company equipment after hours. Someone who matches my daughter's description." The room went deadly quiet. Marcus walked slowly back to the table. "Did you think I wouldn't find out? I have people watching that store. I've known she was there for weeks. Then why haven't you done anything?" Ethan's voice was barely controlled. "Because I was curious to see if she'd finally learned her lesson. 5 years living in filth should have been enough." Marcus's voice was acid. "But apparently she's just as stubborn as her mother." "Don't," Ethan warned. "What? Talk about my own daughter? The one who abandoned her family? Who threw away every opportunity? Who blamed me for her mother's death when Elena made her own choices? You mean the wife you drove to depression?" Ethan snapped. "The one who died 6 months after filing for divorce?" The room froze. Marcus's face turned dangerous. "Choose your next words carefully. I read the medical records. The psychiatric reports. Your wife tried to leave you, and you buried her in legal motions until she had a breakdown. Ethan stood, shaking with anger. Leah didn't run away from privilege. She ran away from you. For 3 seconds, no one breathed. Then Marcus moved. He pulled out his phone and made a call. Yes. This is Marcus Harwood. I'm filing a formal trespass complaint against Leah Harwood at the following business address. He rattled off the flagship store location. She's been stealing from the premises for weeks. I want her arrested. Marcus, don't. And I'm pulling all investment from Marlowe Enterprises, effective immediately. Notify our legal team. I want breach of fiduciary duty charges filed against Ethan Marlowe by end of day. He hung up. The board members looked like they'd witnessed a murder. Marcus buttoned his suit jacket. You want to protect my daughter? Congratulations. You just destroyed your company trying. He walked out. Ethan stood frozen, his heart pounding. His CFO spoke first, her voice shaking. Ethan, we can't survive without Harwood's capital. I know. He'll sue us into bankruptcy. I know. Then why? Ethan looked at the folder on the table, the one containing photos of Leah feeding kids in an alley. Because some things matter more than money. The CFO closed her eyes. You're going to lose everything. Probably. Was it worth it? Ethan thought about Leah's face when she'd said, You never have to see the consequences. Ask me in a week. He grabbed his coat and walked out, leaving 12 board members staring after him in stunned silence. Outside, his phone buzzed. A news alert. Billionaire investor Marcus Harwood files criminal complaint against daughter. It had already started. Ethan had one move left. And it was the riskiest thing he'd ever done. Ethan had 12 hours before Marcus's lawyers buried him. He spent the first hour calling in every favor he'd accumulated in 15 years of business. The second hour liquidating personal assets. The third hour doing something he'd never done before. He called the media. Not the business press. Not the trade publications. The real media. The kind that loved a scandal. By 6 p.m., he was standing outside the Riverside Community Center, where a local nonprofit was hosting their annual donation expo, a small event that usually attracted maybe 50 people and one bored local news crew. Tonight there were 200 people and 6 news vans. Ethan had made sure of it. He'd leaked the story himself. CEO to make major announcement about billionaire investor scandal. The community center director, a kind woman named Patricia, looked overwhelmed. Mr. Marlowe, I don't understand. We weren't expecting. I'm sorry for the chaos, Patricia. But I need your stage for 20 minutes. For what? To tell the truth. Before she could respond, Ethan saw a police car pull into the parking lot. His chest tightened. They're coming for Leah. He pulled out his phone and sent a text to a number he'd acquired from the library volunteer. They're going to arrest you. Don't go to the store. Don't go to the library. Come to Riverside Community Center. Trust me. He didn't know if she'd see it. He didn't know if she'd come. But he had to try. The event coordinator handed him a microphone. You're on in 5, Mr. Marlowe. Are you sure about this? Ethan looked at the cameras, the crowd, the reporters sharpening their questions like knives. No. But I'm doing it anyway. He walked onto the small stage. The crowd quieted. Phones raised. Red recording lights blinked on. Ethan took a breath. My name is Ethan Marlowe. I'm the CEO of Marlowe Enterprises, which operates 17 deli chains across the East Coast. I'm here tonight because I lied to you. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. For years, my company has claimed to care about communities. We've run ad campaigns about feeding families and supporting neighborhoods, but the truth is, we've been throwing away hundreds of pounds of food every night while people in those same neighborhoods go hungry. A reporter shouted a question. Ethan ignored it. 3 weeks ago, I went undercover at our flagship location. I wanted to see why it was failing. What I found was a store full of exhausted, underpaid employees and a broken system that punished them for corporate mistakes. His voice grew stronger. But I also found something else. I found a young woman who was doing more for this community than my entire company ever did. He pulled out his phone and projected a photo onto the screen behind him. Leah in the alley, handing sandwiches to the teenagers. The crowd gasped. Every night, this woman buys ingredients with her own money and feeds homeless people that society has forgotten. She doesn't do it for recognition. She doesn't do it for profit. She does it because no one else will. Marcus Harwood appeared at the back of the crowd, flanked by two men in expensive suits. Ethan saw him. Didn't stop. That woman's name is Leah Harwood. And 6 hours ago, her father, billionaire investor Marcus Harwood, filed criminal charges against her for trespassing and theft. The cameras swiveled toward Marcus. He stood perfectly still, his face unreadable. The same man who's threatening to destroy my company because I refuse to close a store and fire its workers. The same man who forced his daughter to disappear 5 years ago because she didn't want to be like him. That's slander, one of Marcus's lawyers called out. It's the truth, Ethan shot back. And I have the police reports to prove it. He pulled out the file, the domestic disturbance report, the psychiatric hold request, the witness statements. He held them up for the cameras. Marcus Harwood tried to have his 19-year-old daughter institutionalized against her will. When she ran, he froze her bank accounts, canceled her credit cards, and erased her from his life. And now that she's built something good, something that actually helps people, he wants her arrested. The crowd erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Marcus pushed forward, his face dark with rage. You have no right! I have every right! Ethan's voice rang out. Because your investment has funded policies that hurt people. Because your profits came from cutting corners and exploiting workers. Because you've spent 5 years pretending your daughter doesn't exist, and now you want to punish her for surviving without you. Marcus climbed onto the stage. This is character assassination. This is accountability. A voice cut through the chaos. Stop. Everyone turned. Leah stood at the edge of the crowd, her hoodie pulled up, her face pale but determined. She walked toward the stage slowly. People parted like water. Marcus saw her. His expression flickered, just for a second, with something that might have been pain. Then it hardened. Leah. Come home. We can fix this. Leah climbed the steps. Ethan offered her the microphone. She took it. I'm not going home, she said quietly. Her voice shook, but it carried. I haven't had a home since Mom died. Your mother killed herself because you made her life unbearable. Leah's voice broke. And you blamed me. You told everyone I was crazy. That I was dangerous. That I needed to be locked away. Tears streamed down her face. But the truth is, you couldn't control me. And that terrified you. She looked at the cameras, at the crowd, at her father. These people you call thieves and drifters? They're the only family I have. They taught me what it means to care about someone without expecting anything back. They saved me when you threw me away. Marcus opened his mouth. Closed it. For the first time in 5 years, he had nothing to say. Leah handed the microphone back to Ethan and walked off the stage. The crowd erupted in applause. And Marcus Harwood stood alone in the spotlight, watching his daughter disappear into the night. The video went viral in 40 minutes. By morning, it had 20 million views. By afternoon, Marcus Harwood's office was surrounded by protesters. By evening, 3 of his major clients had pulled their accounts. Ethan's phone didn't stop ringing for 3 days. Some calls were threats, lawsuits, board members demanding his resignation, investors fleeing like rats from a sinking ship. But others were different. Franchise owners wanting to implement the food program. Nonprofits offering partnerships. Employees, current and former, sharing their own stories of corporate negligence. And donations. Thousands of them. The nonprofit Ethan's lawyer had filed became a repository for public fury channeled into action. Within a week, they had enough funding to launch the pilot program at all 17 locations. Marcus Harwood's lawsuit was thrown out when his own psychiatric expert refused to testify, citing ethical concerns. The criminal charges against Liao were dropped after public outcry and a strongly worded letter from the district attorney about wasting taxpayer resources. But Marcus didn't disappear quietly. He sold his shares in Marlowe Enterprises at a devastating loss, tanking the stock price. He used his media connections to paint Ethan as a reckless idealist destroying shareholder value. He tried to rally other board members to force Ethan out. It almost worked. Until the quarterly numbers came in. 3 months later. The flagship store looked different. New floors. Fresh paint. Updated equipment. But more than that, it felt alive. The breakfast rush was actually busy. Real customers, not just the desperate and exhausted. They came because word had spread. This was the deli that fed people, employed people who needed second chances, and didn't treat poverty like a crime. Ethan stood behind the counter, wearing a real uniform this time, watching Stephanie train 2 new hires, both former residents of the library's shelter. "You're doing great, Marcus," Stephanie said to the teenage boy Ethan had met in the alley. "Just remember, customer service means eye contact and a smile." Marcus, no longer living in an alley, now living in transitional housing, grinned. "Yes, ma'am." Derek, the former night manager, had been promoted to regional training coordinator. His first task, teaching other locations how to run the donation program without exploiting workers. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Ethan's phone buzzed. A text from his CFO, board meeting in 20. "They're voting on your proposal." He typed back, "On my way." But first, he had someone to see. The new outreach center occupied a renovated warehouse 2 blocks from the flagship store. Inside, the space was divided into sections: a commercial kitchen, a supply depot, a medical clinic staffed by volunteer nurses, and a dozen small offices. One of those offices belonged to Leah Harwood, head of human outreach. Ethan knocked on the open door. Leah looked up from her desk, which was buried in paperwork, donation receipts, and what appeared to be a budget spreadsheet that would make an accountant weep. "You look busy," Ethan said. "I'm drowning." But she was smiling. "Good drowning, though. How many people are you serving now?" 237, as of this morning. We placed 18 people in jobs last week. Got 12 into housing programs. And Mia?" Her smile widened. "Mia started community college. Full scholarship. That's incredible. It's a start." Leah leaned back in her chair. "I got a call from my father's lawyer yesterday." Ethan tensed. "What did they want?" "He's offering me access to my trust fund. No strings attached. Said it's the right thing to do." She laughed softly. "After 5 years, he suddenly discovered morality. Are you going to take it?" "Every penny. And I'm going to use it to expand this program to 10 more cities." She met Ethan's eyes. "He tried to erase me. I'm going to use his money to help people he'd rather forget. That's poetic justice. That's survival." Leah stood and walked to the window overlooking the street. "I used to think running away made me weak. That I should have stayed and fought him. You were 19. I was scared." She turned. "But I learned something out there. The people he'd call losers and failures? They're stronger than he'll ever be. They survive impossible things. They help each other when no one else will. They taught me that power isn't about money. It's about showing up." Ethan joined her at the window. "I'm sorry. For what I said at the library? About you running away from privilege. You weren't completely wrong. I did have advantages. I just didn't realize how rare they were until I lost them." She glanced at him. "But you showed up too. You didn't have to do any of this." "Yes, I did. You reminded me why I started this company in the first place." He smiled. "Before it became about profit margins and investor returns. When it was just about feeding people. Well, you're feeding a lot more people now." "We are." His phone buzzed again. "Board meeting starting." Ethan sighed. "I have to go. They're voting on whether to expand the program company-wide or fire me for tanking the stock price." "What do you think they'll do?" "Honestly? No idea." Leah held out her hand. Either way, thank you. For seeing me when I was trying to be invisible. Ethan shook her hand. Thank you for reminding me what matters. 6 months later. Ethan never went back to his corner office. He sold it along with most of the executive floor, downsizing corporate overhead and redirecting funds to worker benefits and community programs. The board had voted narrowly to keep him, partly because the flagship turnaround was working, partly because firing him would have been a PR nightmare. Marcus Harwood disappeared from public life, his reputation in ruins. Leah expanded the outreach program to 15 cities. And every night at 3 a.m., someone was still making sandwiches. Different people. Different locations. But the same spirit. Ethan visited the original flagship store one last time before heading to a new location launch. The alley where he'd first followed Leah was empty now. The homeless population had moved to the new shelter. The teens had housing. But someone had left something behind. On the brick wall, barely visible in the streetlight, was a neon sticker. Feed people. Always. Ethan smiled. His phone buzzed. Leah Chicago launch is a success. 300 people served first night. Marcus is crying. The good kind. He typed back, told you it would work. Her response was immediate, told you it would work. I was just trying to survive. You turned it into something bigger. Ethan looked at the sticker one more time. Then he walked toward his car, toward the next location, toward the next group of people who needed someone to show up. The world hadn't changed overnight. But it was changing. One sandwich at a time. And